The courtroom fell silent as Captain Ibrahim Traoré stepped forward, dressed in his military uniform, a symbol of resilience and defiance. The judge, with a look of disdain, slammed his gavel. "This is a court of law, not a battlefield," said. "You will be fined for showing such disrespect." Introduction and setup. It was a cold, dreary morning in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. The streets hummed with the early rush of city life. The sound of tires on rain-soaked asphalt, the distant chatter of street vendors, and the rustling of leaves caught in the breeze. The day felt heavy, as if the air itself carried the weight of a nation's struggles. Inside the courthouse, the atmosphere was thick with tension. The courtroom, a large gray room with high ceilings and worn wooden benches, was far from the place of justice it was meant to be. Today was no ordinary day. Captain Ibrahim Traoré, the young leader of Burkina Faso's revolution, stood accused, not for any military action or political statement, but for his choice of clothing. His military attire, a visual reminder of his commitment to the country, was seen as a breach of protocol by the establishment. The judge, a man in his late 50s with thin, silvering hair and glasses perched precariously on the bridge of his nose, peered over his spectacles as he looked at Ibrahim with contempt. The uniform, to him, was not a badge of honor, but a symbol of defiance, one that challenged the order of the court and the very institution he represented. Ibrahim stood still, his posture unwavering, his eyes cold yet filled with quiet resolve. He had been through much worse, battlefields where lives were lost and futures stolen. But today, his presence in this courtroom felt like the true battle. Conflict or challenge introduced. The judge's words cut through the room like a blade. "You will pay the price for this insolence," he declared, slamming the gavel once more. A fine was imposed, a sum far beyond what the average person could afford, let alone a military leader who had given up his career and his life for the country. Ibrahim's mind raced, but his expression remained unchanged. The clerk handed him the fine slip, but as Ibrahim reached for it, a small voice broke through the tension. A young man, barely in his 20s, stood at the back of the courtroom. His voice was shaking, but there was an intensity in it that commanded attention. "Your Honor," the young man said, stepping forward, "if this fine is meant to break Captain Traoré, then you misunderstand him. He is not here to bow to your laws, but to challenge them. His uniform stands for the hope of a nation, not a defiance of your rules." The courtroom erupted in murmurs, but Ibrahim remained still, watching the young man with a quiet intensity. Who was he? A random citizen? Or someone who knew the depths of Ibrahim's struggle more intimately than anyone else? The young man's words ignited something in Ibrahim, and he knew in that moment that this was no ordinary day. Midpoint revelation or twist. As the young man's voice echoed in the courtroom, the judge's face hardened. "I will not be challenged in my own court," he snapped. But before the judge could deliver his verdict, something unexpected happened. The door to the courtroom burst open. A figure, draped in a long coat, entered. It was Maryam, an old ally of Ibrahim's from his early days of rebellion. Her face was set in grim determination, her eyes locked on the judge as she walked up to the bench. Without a word, she handed the judge a sealed envelope. The judge opened it, his eyes scanning the contents before looking up, his face pale. The room was silent. The young man who had spoken earlier stepped forward, his hand trembling slightly. "I know who she is," he said, his voice soft. "Maryam. She is the one who helped Captain Traoré in his darkest hour. She gave him the tools to build this movement. She is the reason he stands before you today." The judge, visibly shaken, looked at Ibrahim, and in that moment something shifted in the air. The defiance that had been in Ibrahim's eyes turned into a quiet understanding. The judge had known about the resistance, but he had never fully understood the power behind it. The fine was lifted, but the message was clear. This was a battle far beyond the courtroom. This was about a nation reclaiming its dignity. Climax. Emotional breakthrough. The room fell into a deep, reflective silence as the weight of what had just transpired settled over everyone. Maryam, standing beside Ibrahim, looked him in the eyes with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You know they won't stop," she said softly. "They'll come for you, and they'll try to break you." But Ibrahim, ever the leader, looked back at her, his expression hardening with resolve. "Let them come," he replied. "I've faced death before, but nothing will break the spirit of the people." The judge, now visibly defeated, nodded quietly, unable to respond. The young man who had spoken up earlier gave a small, knowing smile. His words had ignited something that would not be extinguished. The courtroom, a place once filled with cold formality, now stood as a symbol of the people's power, resolution, and quiet closure. As Ibrahim and Mariam left the courthouse, the city outside seemed to breathe with them. The rain had stopped and the sun peeked through the clouds, casting a soft glow over the streets. People moved about their day, unaware of the battle that had just been fought in the heart of the city. But Ibrahim knew this was just the beginning. The judge's words, they had all been a test of resolve, of courage, and of what it truly meant to fight for justice. And in the quiet of the streets, as Ibrahim walked alongside Mariam, there was no victory lap, no cheers, just the knowledge that the struggle would continue, and that they were ready for whatever came next. The symbol of the military uniform, once seen as a challenge to the court, had now become a beacon of hope. Ibrahim Traoré was not just a man in a uniform. He was the voice of a nation's resistance, and nothing could silence him now. Call to action for YouTube. If this story touched your heart, consider subscribing for more inspiring tales of hope, healing, and unexpected kindness. Hit the like button and share this with someone who needs it today. Together, we can remind the world that even in the darkest times, the human spirit remains unbreakable.